You know, what I truly believe real wellness is and real self-care is knowing for certain that the way that you're caring for yourself is what you were created to be cared for as.
As a young mother, I experienced a paradigm shift that transformed how I saw education and ultimately the world around me. I started this podcast, The Luminous Mind, to connect with and learn from people who are disrupting the status quo in how they learn, educate, and live in the world around them. Prepare for a paradigm shift. Light a candle, light your world.
Benjamin Franklin said, "Instead of cursing the darkness, light a candle." You're listening to The Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's Firestarter is Jami Amerine. Jami is an author, speaker, and artist. She and her husband, Justin, live in the North Houston, Texas area. Jami and Justin have 6 children ranging in ages from 6 to 25. Jami is a 3-time published author and royalty artist. Jami and Justin are advocates for foster care and adoption. You can learn more about Jami at sacredgroundstickyfloors.com. Welcome, Jami.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to chat about your 3rd book, Well Girl, An Inside Out Journey to Wellness. But before we get into any of that, can you just tell our audience just a little bit more about yourself?
Well, sure. So I am a wife and mom. I've been married to Justin for 28 years, and we have 6 children, 4 biological, I guess, semi-grown. The oldest is 25, and Sophie, our youngest, is 18. She's supposed to go to college in New York, and so she's slightly disgruntled because she won't be going this semester. And then we started all over with foster care and adoption, and we adopted Sam when he was 9 days old, and Charlie was our first long-term foster placement. He was with us for 2.5 years before we finalized his adoption, and they are cool. 6 and 8. Yeah, they're a handful. And we homeschool, and Justin is my business manager, and I'm also an artist. I have a background in counseling, human development, and education, and I kind of do all the things. And I actually am an accidental author. Somebody encouraged me to put up a blog, and I reluctantly did it, and then I posted from my phone a blog post called An Open Letter to My Children, You're Not That Great, which was crazy, insane, millions of reads, like overnight. Number 1 blog on WordPress, and ended up with a 2-book deal, and blindly got into the writing world. And yeah, so now we're on book 3. The downside to that kind of instant book publishing experience is I didn't know anybody or anything. So it makes it a little harder to swim to the top. And especially because I think people assume if you're funny, that you're an extrovert, and that's not true. So that's hard for me. And at the same time, everything that I talk about is about the freedom of a personal relationship with your creator. And so I find it's hard to do the things that a lot of social media giants and great authors have to do or like to do, and that's draw a lot of attention to myself.
That's interesting. I have a friend that he likes to talk about politics in relation to how, our relationship with God. It is one of those things, like if you're talking about religion, sometimes you're just shy, to say much about it because you just don't want to be, I don't know even why we do that. It's just not a popular thing maybe, and that we don't want to be criticized for something that's so dear to us, type of thing. And he constantly has people like, why do you always have to talk about God? And he's like, well, this is central to everything that's going on. If we don't understand this part of it, we're not going to get the rest of it,
Right.
So
right. Well, and I think the big thing too, well, for me, this is the thing that always gets me. If you draw too much attention to yourself in relation to, look at me, this is all the stuff I know and all the greatness that I'm experiencing, on the human side of that, the minute that you mess up, everybody's blames God.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I always say, don't blame Jesus. It's not his fault that we're so messed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I found some balance in that. I like to be genuine. I like to, it's all fine and dandy. My husband and I just got back from this wonderful weekend away with a late celebration for our anniversary, and that's cute and darling, and everybody's oohing and awing over the pictures. And today we're not speaking, so it is what it is. It's real life, and it's one of the big drawbacks, I think, to real life being so accessible to everyone, is that you can put on a pretty song and dance, but then if it completely falls apart, that's just as personal and private. And I don't know, it's hard for me to, when I say I want to be real, I think, but that sounds so cheesy. But I do. I don't want anybody to go, I want to be just like Jami, because you don't, because it's a mess. That's not what you want. So.
Well, and I feel that way. I have a hard time being really authentic about things. I'm trying to be more and more like that, because I think that for so long we were raised like everything in media, everything needed to have, look professional and very polished and, completely put together. And so I have a hard time showing that side of myself, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then, like you said, you don't want to create this image of things that you believe and then have it all unravel. And I don't know, that side of perfection, it's hard to balance it maybe with the ugly.
Yeah. And I think, there's cliche statements about it. Was it Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, mm-hmm. that had this persona of just pure wonderfulness, and it fell apart. And then people go, oh, well, yeah, there's Christians for you. And my take on it is, well, yeah, exactly. That's exactly who we are. But then there's a level of piety and just ickiness that I think people are so sick of.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, I say this about my millennials, they can spot deceit mm-hmm. and a show from 2,000 feet. They know it when they see it. And, right now there's a really popular author and blogger that, had completely rallied the troops for her way of life. And then without warning, really without any warning at all, it was like, yeah, no, we're getting a divorce. And everybody was like, okay, well, we want our money back for the tickets to the marriage retreat that we went to 2 weeks ago. It's like, it's a huge responsibility, but I think it's less of a responsibility when you're willing to go, yeah, this is what stinks.
Yeah.
This is why it's hard. This is as real as it gets. I'm not trying to be funny when I say that Justin and I are not talking. We've gotten a huge fight and we're not talking. Mm-hmm. And okay, that's me and Justin. That's just kind of how life goes. But if you're constantly trying to perform, I just don't think it does anybody any favors anyway.
Yeah, it does. And I love how you say that millennials spot that, maybe that hypocrisy, right off. Yeah. Because that is very true. And they've had everything at their fingertips almost entirely all of their lives. Yeah.
So they're like, yep, scam. Nope, not real. Nope, not falling for it. Uh-huh. Now they have some other drawbacks that we deal with on the daily. Me personally as their mother. But I'm quick to defend them in that, because I don't think it's even that, I hear this a lot from other moms. It seems like they hate what we stood for as Christians, and I don't believe they hate it, but I believe that they've completely risen up and gone, wait a minute, there has to be more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And two, and I'm not trying to get political, but the one of the hardest things that we had to deal with was we were raised, just my husband and I, were raised, there was just certain things you didn't talk about that were completely mm-hmm. unacceptable, and basically is homosexuality. And that was just not something that went on. If that was the thing. And my thing that I see with my kids is, then they had to go out and actually know these people. It's easy to say that when we just didn't talk about it. These are their friends. They're seeing more of what it truly means and means something to them. And so the arguments that, well, we were just not going to talk about that and no, it wasn't okay, now has a face and a name. Mm-hmm. And they have real opinions and real true feelings about it. And I think to rise up against anything when it comes to millennials and what we used to believe or what we thought was right or wrong, if you're not willing to go, yeah, they're living something that you never lived.
Yeah,
And
that's for sure.
goes a long way in truly being able to communicate on a different level and understand and know them.
Well, and when we talk about them spotting hypocrisy right off, too, the other side that I love about millennials, too, is that they have a lot of empathy for people, you know,
and a lot of empathy. That's exact. Actually, would have summed up better what I was saying.
And a lot of love for other people, too.
They do.
Yeah, that's
and
another way we
quick to criticize. We're real quick to criticize that, like they're fluffy or, you know, way so liberal or anything else. And I'm thinking, no, they really do have empathy and they care about other human beings, regardless of whether or not they agree with them. So I would say that about all four of my kids. Yeah. That are, yeah. Well, Sophia, millennial, she's 18. She's heavily influenced by millennials.
I think my kids are too. They spend a lot of time on YouTube learning from millennials. Too.
Yes, they do.
At least that's my 12-year-old. I see him doing that a lot. But
so it's interesting, but it's also, I applaud it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'd love for you to give us some background. Like I said, we want to talk about your third book, but you have other work that you've already written. Give us some background to those books and that work. And then tell me, you know, where do you normally focus your time? Because not only do you have those two books, you also have, you're an artist and you have a studio and you sell amazing things online to do with that too. So, you know, give me some idea of things like that.
So my first book was called Stolen Jesus, the Unconventional Search for the Real Savior. And what happened was I had the viral post and I ended up with an agent and I had a manuscript and no real aspirations of anything happening with it. But that manuscript was called Sacred Ground, Sticky Floors. And
well, can you take us back even a tiny bit more than that? Sure. I'd love to know more about your viral post, you know, that open letter to your children. You're not that great. The title sounds a little like, it's very provocative. But
it was provocative. I had no idea what I was doing. Like I said, I posted it from my phone and I wrote it sitting in a dance recital, Sophie's dance recital, while I was holding a crack-addicted foster placement. So he had tremors from, little tiny guy, baby O. I think he weighed like 4 pounds. And I was just kind of watching everything going on around me, which was this celebration of this recital where everybody was basically oblivious to everyone else. Taping off seats, which they had told us, please don't put tape on the seats. Bringing in balloons, please don't bring in balloons because then other people can't see. Putting up camcorders and bringing food in and just completely out of their minds celebrating this dance recital. And it wasn't like a professional, it was just a dance recital. And so
we get that way with our kids, right? We think like everything they do is absolutely amazing.
Absolutely.
And we try to make this huge, you know, deal when it's just another dance recital, right?
Exactly. And that is the gist of it. But I can't say that I wouldn't have done it, although by the time the death threats started coming in, I was rethinking my entire existence. But it was just a rant. I don't think it's even, it may not even be more than 1,000 words. But it was basically, I hope that you know, I didn't bring Sophie flowers. I forgot flowers. I had a little crack baby. And I was barely getting in by, and I made it to the recital. But I was just watching the stuff going on around me, and I just was like, this is ridiculous. How will they rise up and have compassion? How will they have empathy? How will they, you know? And so I think the gist of it is, you know, I hope you're lonely, because if you're not lonely, how will you recognize the lonely?
Yeah.
You know, I hope that you're left out. I hope that you're forgotten. I hope, because those things, as much as we don't want to see our children hurt, those are the things that turn us into compassionate, decent human beings. And so I said those things and got the blessings and the curses that go with saying those things.
That's really interesting, because I remember when I first wanted to start homeschooling my kids, I was worried like, oh, they're going to be made fun of. They're going to feel lonely. They're going to feel like they don't have a place in this world. And I remember when I first started, I'm like, that can't happen. I won't let that happen to my kids. And of course it does, because when you're doing something different and off the wall, your kids end up being kind of the outcast. But that has been the greatest blessing to their life, because they see that person, they see the lonely, they see the lost, they see the forgotten. And so I think like you are exactly right on that. Like if we always protect them from all of those bad things that happen to other people, and I remember the pain from those things. And that's what, as a parent, I was trying to shield my children from that pain. But by shielding them from that pain, I would take away some really important character development. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we go out of our way to hurt them. But,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, sometimes maybe, but, especially with foster care, I remember with our love that we had for 2 years, that was returned to her restored mama, Sophie, who at the time was maybe 14, was walking the floor with her carrying her on her hip and singing the song, I'm going to love you like I'm going to lose you. I'm going to hold you like I'm saying goodbye. And I remember thinking, what have I done? But she has a beautiful voice, and it may not have been anything for her to sing that. It was maybe just her favorite song. But I walked into Hobby Lobby the other day to pick up some supplies, and or it was Michael's, I guess, but it was blaring that song. And I immediately turned around and went and sat in the car and just sobbed. The thing about it is, I still grieve that loss. I still celebrate that loss because we made a difference in that child's life and the life of her mother. But I did sign up for that. I knew it was a risk.
Because you ended up, like you said, she was restored.
Yeah,
you lost,
we lost her after 2 years.
Person that you started to love. Yeah.
But I wouldn't change that for myself or for them, because I grew in that. And really, you could argue that foster care isn't something my kids signed up for. They didn't sign up to love Joy Baby and lose Joy Baby, but they did. And every single one of them will tell you that it was worth it. How do you not? You can't stop the force of love. That's everything. So to think if our children hurt, it's because always a hurt means that something didn't work out, or love was lost, or something happened that went against love, right? Mm-hmm. But if we grow and we learn from that, they become these amazing humans.
Exactly. Well, but you were talking about the blog post of the open letter.
Okay, yeah.
Child, and then,
so then
what happened after that?
I got an agent because of that, and she pitched Sacred Ground Sticky Floors, which the name Sacred Ground Sticky Floors came from our first foster placement. I texted another foster mom, and he was injured. That was Charlie that we have now. He's our 6-year-old. And I said, oh my gosh, I haven't slept in days. This is so hard. And I just kind of vented this huge message to her because she was seasoned. And she texted me back and said, I know it's hard, but keep a record of everything that happens while he's in your care. You are on sacred ground. And I was like, what? No, I'm not. And then right after that, Sam, who I think was not even 2, tried to pour apple juice from like Sam's Club and dropped the bottle, and it exploded everywhere. And it was like right after she said it, and that name popped in my head, Sacred Ground Sticky Floors. So I wrote this book. I just knocked out 60,000 words in 9 days and gave it to somebody and that knew something about it, and then ended up with the viral post. And then the Harvest House asked to do a 2-book deal instead of a 1-book deal. And my agent said, there's a chapter in Sacred Ground Sticky Floors called Stolen Jesus. I think that's a book. And I was like, that's a story about me stealing a painting of Jesus from the YMCA. I can't turn that into a book. There's no way for me to drag out that 15 minutes of my life. And she said, I really want you to think about and pray about it. So I said, okay. And they took that without even a proposal. And again, knocked out, actually at that point, it was 40,000 words in 7 days. I called my sister and I said, I've unraveled all of these things about Jesus, because I was actually have a background. Originally, my parents were Mormon, and then we were Lutheran, and then we were Baptist, Assembly of God. We just hit all of them. And then when I married Justin, I became Catholic. So I just started telling these stories about things as I experienced them. And then I got to the arc of the book, and I called my sister and said, I got nothing else to say. I know what he's not. I don't know what he is. And now I'm completely lost. And she said, well, I think you need to come listen to this podcast I just listened to. And so I went to her house and listened to it. And it was the message of grace, that you can't earn it. You can't pay it back. This is it. He said yes to you, and your yes to him is all that it takes. And went home, and I think within 48 hours turned it into Harvest House, and they took it.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
Stolen Jesus is the message of falling into the arms of grace and what it means to be truly loved. If you make a purchase, if you buy something, it's a purchase, so that's not the cross. And if you earn something, that's a wage, so that's not the cross. So it's just a gift. And then Sacred Ground, Sticky Floors, it was kind of the same unraveling. It was one of the hardest seasons of my life. And the weekend that I wrote the entire book, which was just word vomit, we put John on the bus to go to Marine boot camp, and I buckled Joy Baby into her car seat and have never seen her again. So it was funny. I write from a real raw, humorous place. And then thanks to Luke, who actually wrote the afterword to that book, our third son, leaving an illegal narcotic in the back seat of my car when I got pulled over, it has a really good ending. So,
now talk about tantalizing.
yeah. So I actually, the morning after I was held in police custody for possession of an illegal narcotic, I called my editor at Harvest House and said, wait till you get a load of the new ending. And she was so like, funny. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. And then it was like 15 minutes later, she called me and she couldn't even talk. She was laughing so hard. And I can laugh about it now. But at the time, I was like, seriously, motherhood is the armpit of all vocations. So, yeah, I think the best way that I sum it up is that in Stolen Jesus, I unraveled the truth of what it means to be saved. And in Sacred Ground, Sticky Floors, I unraveled, for me, what it meant to be completely a part of my children and completely apart from my children. Their good and bad deeds don't define me, just as my good and bad deeds don't define my relationship with my father.
And that's a message so many people need to hear. I mean, that's why, you have parents that are making a huge deal over a tiny little recital, because it's actually more about them than it is about their kids.
Yeah, well, and my highlight in that was we had to send Luke away to military school, which was like, I was a homeschool mom and foster mom, and people would tell me, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. Oh, you're so amazing, that kind of thing. And I had to send him away to save him from himself. And it was horrific. It went against everything that I loved about my life. And right after that happened, someone that I knew was talking bad about us for sending him away. We were at Sophie's piano recital, and Sophie plays the piano by ear since she was 2. And when I say she plays the piano, she literally can hear a song one time and play the piano by ear. Anything. That's amazing. In chords. It's creepy weird. And so, because none of us have that ability, we're, a band of dyslexics, and she's a genius. And my Marine son always goes, would the DNA like filter all to the bottom of your placental reserve? And she just got all of it because the rest of us are like, do what? So anyway, and we were at her recital, and this woman walked up to me afterwards and was just like, that was amazing. And I knew this woman had been talking about me because I'd heard from several people. She just thinks you're evil for sending Luke away. And she walked up to me and she said, oh my gosh, that was amazing. It was just absolutely breathtaking. Sophie's so talented. You're such an amazing mother. And I remember thinking, wait, I didn't have anything to do with that. I have no idea why Sophie can do that. It makes no sense to us. So why am I amazing because Sophie can do that? And why am I the worst because Luke messed up?
Yeah.
So then, after I had exposed everything I could about myself in those two things, I mean, I have to do this, aren't I? And so, well, girl, it is my writing style. I think it has evolved, which it's with a different publisher. And so Carrie Scott and Katie Reed that edited that book and read a lot more than I do, because I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but because I am dyslexic, I don't read a whole lot. But they both said this needs to be more inviting than the other two books. So it just every once in a while, I'll say something like, have you ever felt like that? Or Do you hear what I'm saying? So it has a little bit of a different twinge to it, but it was still the same thing, me exposing everything that I've believed for 48 years and coming to the conclusion that there is one answer, and that's to trust your creator with your pookie, as my husband called it. No, well, that's it. I mean, it's basically, that's exactly what I did. My core beliefs about religion unraveled in the first, my core beliefs about my motherhood unraveled in the second, and my core beliefs about wellness and the size of my butt unraveled in the third.
Well, and other than you getting advice that need to be more, more from a personal level to draw the reader in, were there other reasons why you wanted to shift that focus from your religion or from your motherhood? Like, was there some kind of, I'd love to know if there's some kind of background story to that shift.
Yeah, I've been doing this since I was 12. I've been struggling with my appearance since I was 12. And I was tired. And,
it's exhausting.
It is exhausting. But I also, because there had been such divine revelation in Stolen Jesus and Sacred Ground, Sticky Floors. I mean, I actually, there was a line in Sacred Ground, Sticky Floors that was, my editor emailed me and said, this is absolutely the most brilliant thing you've ever written. And the line was, more than just my children, these are my brothers and sisters in Christ. And that's of significance. And I read it and went, did I write that? Wait, so I Googled it to make sure I wasn't supposed to quote it. But I felt like it was, I call it the download. I just start getting in this space when I am writing that is, I unravel. I completely unravel. And so I thought that's what was going to happen with Well Girl. And I thought that there was going to be this download, and I'd go back and read and go, okay, we're all supposed to eat a fourth a cup of green beans every day. I've literally thought he was going to tell me, this is where you're missing the mark. This is what you need to eat, and this is what you need to do to work out, and this is how you're going to get over this. And I told Katie Reed, that wrote Made Like Martha, and she said, well, why don't you just start writing that then? Ask him, because that's how you get most of your 411. So I did. I just wrote, when are you going to tell me what we should eat and how we should work out and what we're supposed to do? And just plain as day, I felt like he just went, why would I tell you what my children should eat? Why would I tell you how my children should work out? And it was very clear to me. My son, Sam, is allergic to walnuts. My daughter, Maggie, is allergic to gluten. Sam loves ground beef, and if you put ground beef in front of Charlie, he will instantly start vomiting. Why would I have that information for you?
I love that. You know why I love that is because you get on any social media site or any blog or whatever, and they instantly want to tell you how you should eat or work out.
Because it works for them.
Yes.
Why would it work for you?
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense. It is, again, it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. Why would I be the answer? Which is hard, because I want you to go buy my book. When you're finished with it, I can't tell you that you're supposed to walk 3 miles a day and eat more carrots, because I don't know. Yeah. You might be allergic to carrots and missing a leg. Why is that my business?
Yeah. And even though we may be like brothers and sisters in Christ, like you said about your children, we all are still really unique. And he loves that about us. At least that's my feeling. That
Well, it took a huge weight off my shoulders to realize I didn't have to write the book that told the world what they needed to eat. But I think there'll be there's always fallout when you're brutally honest. I think one of the fallouts will be people that read it that want to be told. And I wanted to be told. And I am told, but I'm not ever told maliciously or, you should go drink that whey shake, because he knows that whey shakes make me violently ill. And I'm fascinated by this, because the more that I've followed my advice that did come with that, which was feasting with the Father, the way in, which the way in is not weighing in, like getting on a scale, but weighing in, I want to experience intimacy with God and his holy instruction. And that applies to everything in my life. And it's never miserable. It's never awful. And we were created with these senses to experience taste and touch and smell. And he gave those to us. That's another gift. We can't earn those. We wake up and we have them. They're ours, right?
Yeah.
And we negate those and think that we can fix ourselves and do these outlandish things trying to get better, and they go against everything that he created us to be. And when it falls away, it's such a relief. It's such a relief, because it's so exhausting. I mean, can you imagine with your kids if every day they had to come down and ask, are you still my mommy? Or, and we might have this conversation later, are we still married?
Yeah.
But if you had to do that every day, there's something to be said for knowing that you're cared for and loved. That changes everything. I'm amazed that Stolen Jesus is a thing, that it's a book, and that there was so much more to it than I could have ever imagined, because he is stolen from us, and we also allow him to be stolen from us because we doubt that he is who he says he is, and we don't believe that we are who he says we are. And when we do, you can take a deep breath and trust that it probably isn't a quick fix. It probably isn't 20 pounds in 10 days. It probably isn't all the things that you think that you want, but even the things you thought you wanted change when you're in line with what he wants.
Yeah. Well, and a quick fix too, of course we all want that, but anything quick that comes in life, you just take it for granted. But anything you've really had to work really hard for, you appreciate and you adore, and it's very special to you. And I think we forget that a lot, that the things that we have to work the hardest for are the things that we really love and cherish.
Yeah. Well, and I think with, at least for me, and I try and say this often because I don't like to speak for other people, but I really believed that a lot of scripture, like be perfect as Christ is perfect, and don't you know your body is a temple, that those were threats. And I'm so far from that belief now. They're guidance, but I don't threaten my kids if they eat too much candy. I mean, I don't threaten to withhold love for any reason. That's contingent love. And God is not a contingent God. He said yes, and that's that, right? So when we get past that, and we're just in a space where we're enjoying his company instead of trying to earn favor that we already have, and condemning self, terrorizing self, beating self into submission in some kind of weird facade that we think earns favor with him, we're just stepping further and further away from him and know less of what would be best for us.
Yeah.
So we try the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and then we berate ourselves and we step further away. And all the while in, these uber Christian circles, we're going, I love the Lord, but, and I say this, I think I've said it in all 3 books, there is no but in a good I love you. A good I love you has no contingency, and God is love, and perfect love casts out all fear. And what adds fear to anything is a but. And I've gotten where I used to say this all the time, even one of my kids would do something, and I go, I love you, but da-da-da-da-da. Well, no, that's a contingent love. I love you, but if you don't stop climbing out the window, I'm going to strangle you. Okay, well, that's I love you, but that means that my love for you has something that's standing in the way of how I feel about you. And when we have that, even though they're just maybe words and they just may be kidding, they speak volumes about what we understand about love.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to know too. So earlier we were talking about millennials and how they can spot hypocrisy a mile away. Many millennials now are they would consider themselves not religious or not. But I wonder if that, you were talking about the temple as a body and, all those scriptures that we hear as threats. I feel like a lot of the way that I grew up was that other people in my life used those scriptures as a means to control me. And I feel like that's why so many young people may not be religious, is because they can feel the hypocrisy and that they know that that's really not the gospel. Do you know what I mean? That's not who God is, and that isn't how he operates. Sadly, though, is that they associate, some of them can't separate, like, oh, this is what somebody was, the scripture or whatever was something that somebody was using to control me when that wasn't it at all. Like, he tells us that, our bodies are like a temple because he wants us to know how special we are to him. And like he cleansed the temple because it was a special place to him. What's your feeling on that? Like how much of what you feel it's not stuff that we necessarily read in scripture, but it's like what those religious groups, and I go to church, I'm a religious person stuff. I have friends in the faith, but we also need to be really careful in those groups not to use scripture to get people to comply. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes. Well, so I actually, I think I even have a blog post so I had that viral post, and then I had several more viral posts because of that. And they were all stuff I wish you'd quit saying. That was what they trended under, is stuff I wish you'd quit saying. When are you going to try and get it pregnant again? Or, oh, but you have such a pretty face. So it's all the cliches.
Yeah.
And I hit on a lot of those. And one of them was stuff I wish you'd quit saying, oh, you're so religious. And that was after Stolen Jesus, because I'm not religious. I love Jesus, but I'm very against anyone's calling me that, because I get that. I mean, I got an email the other day that said, I just hate Christians. We hate all of us. We don't all embody completely what it means to love Christ. And then blaming Jesus because I mess up, because something I just said offends you, again, is still not Jesus. That wasn't, and I do say this on my blog too, no offense comes from the Lord, and lucky for you, I'm not him. But the thing that I think happens is that we replace a love of Jesus and being nurtured by Jesus and truly fed and guided in a one-on-one relationship with him, because a religion is the God. And they said, you can't do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this. Well, and you can't do this, and this is right, and this is wrong, and so-and-so's church says this, and so-and says this, it's everything in our lives is so polarized and then played out on social media.
We will return to our show after a word from our sponsors. For the ultimate in backcountry comfort, check out the high-quality gear of Teton Hammock Company. Whether you're going on an overnight trip or a week-long adventure, the ultralight outdoor equipment from the Teton Hammock Company will keep you warm, dry, and sleeping like a baby. Their products are made of top-quality materials that outperform all others. Check them out at tetonhammocks.com with an S. That is tetonhammocks.com. Hang with the best. Teton Hammock Company. Now back to the episode. Yeah, we've basically made God in our own image. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
he sounds a lot like me in my head. So, yeah, which I actually, I reference that quite a bit in Well Girl. If you sit down before you eat something or make a financial decision or whatever, and you ask, is this for me? Everything is permissible. Is this beneficial for me?
Yeah.
And wait 2 seconds. There's two voices. There's one that's calm and still, and it's almost instinctual. And the minute that you start saying you can't hear that, you can't hear it, because your subconscious goes, oh, we can't hear that. She doesn't listen to that. That's not for her. And the subconscious is pesky like that. But there is that voice. And the minute you start saying, I can hear that. I need to hear that. I want to hear that. I'm listening for that. The subconscious is more privy to that. But the more that we berate ourselves, the more that we hate on ourselves, and the more that we say we can't, the more that those things are obvious. And that's basic science, which I think, a lot of very religious people go, well, I don't want any part of that. Okay, well, then you can't use Band-Aids or aspirin either. This is the truth of who he created us to be. We're these complex beings with these amazing minds. But at the same time, those minds are something that have to be dealt with. So I used to get, if anybody said anything about energy, like, oh, that's got negative energy, I would go, oh, that's not Christian. We shouldn't say stuff like that. Well, energy is energy. How do you pedal a bike? How do you walk down the stairs? It's a thing. And if you're not willing to recognize, if you're around somebody that is absolutely toxic and abusive, that there's an energy that comes from that stifles creativity, that makes you feel a certain way. Why do you feel something? Well, you feel it because of energy. And who created that energy? God. So, we get caught up in the religion of what's good and what's new age, what's bad, what's this or this or this. And we put these cloaks of religion on those things and take them captive And then we're not willing to see other things around us. And I truly believe that the minute we step away from that and just ask this simple question, everything is permissible, is it beneficial? That the answer is very clear. So yeah, okay. I said that about that. I said that about the energy, but take this for example.
Well,
So,
the energy work kind of triggers me right now because I live very close to Chad and Lori, the Daybell thing.
oh, okay.
And they were huge into that energy work. And so
Right.
I'm like, oh.
Yeah, right. So, but why do you have trigger words? Well, we all have them.
Yeah.
But so let me give you an example that will maybe clear the field for you and I about that. So I had written something along those lines about toxic and trying to explain myself, and I sent it to somebody and to read that was a little bit out there, and she emailed back and said, yeah, this and this that need fixed. I only use her every once in a while for editing. And she said, and let me send you a crystal bracelet because if you're into that. And I was like, not for me. don't need it.
Don't
I mean,
about that.
like, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I am not going to worship a bracelet, but it's because that's not for me. That's not who he created me to be, my God. He wants no gods before him. And that's not even a threat. It's for my own good. The minute that I think, and this is huge for me, and it's all what I'm writing right now for my 4th book proposal and stuff. But anytime that you believe something has more power in your life than God, it does.
Yeah. Definitely.
So he gets to decide. He is everything. He is all of the things. But the minute that you think your boss gets to decide your fate, he does. The minute that you believe without a doubt that God is for you, he's for your children, he's for your family, he is for your success, and he has a plan and a way for you, that is when your faith is put into action and all things work together for good, and you can have peace and joy and life abundant because he is in charge. But we give away that power. And I propose that we actually give it away in a lot of ways to religion. They said that we can't do that, that, not allowed to dance. And in your very core, you were created to dance. That's what he made you to do. And you were supposed to be, on Broadway or whatever. And you're going, well, I can't. No, they said I can't. It's giving away that power instead of going, this is for me and this is not for me. Yeah. Dancing's not, okay. So I'm not about to get into something where I'm worshiping crystals or believing in that kind of thing. But at the same time, for so long, I think what he was trying to show me about the mind and belief, even as far back as graduate school, I'd see inklings of what he was trying to show me about that. And I'd go, oh, that's New Age. Well, actually, it's not. It's just the subconscious. It's just literally the parts of the brain that I was told you weren't supposed to look into that. And the more that I've looked into it, the more I've gone, that's everything that's wrong with my faith.
Mm. Well, and when we limit ourselves on what we can and cannot do, we may be creating a situation where we aren't living the full potential that God wants us to live because we're, you know what I mean? Like you're just stopping that. And instead of, I love that question. I think is super core of is this beneficial for me? That's the key component there.
And it can be so simple. It can be the most simple thing in the world. The most tiny, should I eat this for lunch or should I buy that? And it could be the biggest thing ever. Mm-hmm. Is this a relationship that I need to be invested in, or do they need to go be made well away from me? It applies to everything. And I mean, even somebody told me the other day about a show, and I can't remember what it was, but I'm super sensitive to story. So we left a movie one time and I was just, this man's son died and then he won this award that he wanted, and my mom and sister were like, that was so beautiful. And I didn't sleep for 2 days. I was like, why would you care if you won that award if you're, my mom was like, it was just a movie. Why do you do this? Well, that's how I work. So somebody said this show was something that I'd enjoy. And I turned it on and I watched maybe the first 3 minutes and then I paused it and went, is this for me? And just like that. Nope, don't watch it. And so I didn't watch it. And then the next day, in the light of day, I read some of the reviews about it, and it would have terrorized me. It would not have been, it would have dredged up.
That same problem with different movies.
Yeah, it would have dredged up the losses that we've had over the last few years that are still losses and stuff comes up. But why would I sit in the ashes of that? I don't want to be. I love our foster care journey. I loved taking care of my mother-in-law while she was dying. I loved that things fell apart and we ended up moving from the only home we'd ever known. I love those stories now, but I could go back and rehash them and make myself physically sick. But why would I do that when I have everything to give thanks for? I actually am pretty much wholly opposed to a lot of that. I think in the media now, it's like the sadder the story, the better it is. And I think there's something about being moved, but then there's something else to being just intelligent about what's for you and what's not. And he knows what's for you and what's not. So somebody said, well, have you ever seen The Notebook? And my mom was standing right there and she went, she's not created to watch The Notebook. And I'm not, whether it's touching or beautiful or whatever, it's not for me because the way I'm wired, I'm not okay from stuff like that. I think that knowing that about myself is actually probably brought me a lot of confidence in how I react to different things. If it's not for me, it's not for me. Oh, well. There's something else will be.
Well, and it brings confidence, and also you stop shaming yourself about that.
Exactly.
Because you're not living by somebody else's, this is good for you, but something about it doesn't feel right for you. So
right. It's so important. You know, what I truly believe real wellness is and real self-care is knowing for certain that the way that you're caring for yourself is what you were created to be cared for as. I can't do keto. It's not for me because I think it's gross. If it works for you, if that's what sets you free and heals you and isn't your God, go for it. Be blessed. Be well. Whatever. But don't tell me to do it, please.
Yeah.
Stop telling me to do it. And I did CrossFit and I ran marathons and I did all of those things for years. And then I was terribly injured from abusing my body and then further injured while I was taking care of my mother-in-law. And those things are no longer for me. It's not that I'm not healed. It's not that I'm not tough. It's none of those things. He has something else for me now because he accommodates just like I accommodate to Sam can't have walnuts. I'm not going to give him walnuts. They make his face swell up.
Yeah. Well, and everything has a time and a season. Everything has a purpose
Absolutely.
for what you may be doing. I was thinking too, sometimes we as Christians call people to repentance. And I'm really conscientious of this because I have kids that have been out doing missions and things like that. And I always I cringe at that because I think the only person that can really help you change your paradigm and change your mindset and bring you back into is really God. Do you know what I mean? And so and if we call somebody to repentance and we tell them what they should and should not be doing, it actually creates a wall where God won't speak to them. Do you know what I mean? Like they close it down. It becomes a thing anything to do with God or anything to do with, they don't want to listen because somebody else
called them on it. Well, then think about that for a minute. If you heard from so-and-so that another one of your friends heard something about you gossiping about them and it was true, that you knew it was true and that you were about to be called out, how much dread, how much discomfort, how much agony is invested in waiting for that phone call? And you are never supposed to feel that way with the God who created you and adores you. That veil was torn. Yeah. He made the ultimate sacrifice. You don't have to feel that way with him. He's not mad. He's not upset. No harm, no foul. He's your daddy and he'll take care of you. And he knew that it happened. That call is not coming. That judgment is not coming. And confession, and I always forget how to say it, but it's leogos in Greek, actually means to agree with. I agree with you. That was not for me. I agree with you. A different choice would have been better. I agree with you. I'm sorry that it happened, and I agree with you. I am yours. You can take me on to the next thing.
When it comes directly from the source, it becomes more comforting and not a shameful thing, like if somebody calls you out on it. And that's what...
Well, and this is in Well Girl. It's actually a quote from Carrie Scott, who also, like I said, Katie and Carrie both edited, and they're both books, but guilt is being sorry for something you've done. Shame is being sorry for who you are. Mm-hmm. And how, this was my big question to myself, how could I possibly be ashamed of who I am when who I am was created by the great I am?
Oh, beautiful. Well, and do you feel like there's any other ways that your paradigm has changed over time and with experience on these issues of wellness, body image? We talked a little bit about repentance and shaming and things like that. Anything that you feel like is maybe different or unique to the thought process of what you might see in other places out there?
Everything has changed for me in the last 5 years. Everything has changed for me. The way I feel about myself, the way I feel about God, the way I love the people I allow to be in my life. And I said that sounds arrogant, but I do say this often, and I'd say it when I'm giving counsel to other people. There's some people that you just have to say, you can go be made well away from me. And that is not a judgment on your faith or your Christianity. They're not for you. But I think the thing that sets my ministry, if you call it that, apart is that I know if I know I'm not the answer, and I have no desire to be your answer. I do want freedom for every woman, and I can sniff it out from the emails that I get and comments from readers, and that bound up place of religiosities and shamefulness and brokenness is not for you. And I know that it's not the totality of my responsibility, but I want to scream it from the mountaintops. You are free. And once you are free indeed. And you don't ever want to go back.
I love that you can sense that about people. That's one thing that I've noticed too about myself is like I went through that whole shameful, and then that bitterness that comes with it, that, that side of it where you feel like you've been shamed and then it makes you really bitter. And that's what I think I can sense is like, and I keep thinking, you need to continue to work through this, get through that. And then on the other side, we can talk about it, but like, you can't necessarily walk somebody through that. And that part is really, it's hard because you want, like you said, you want to scream it from the rooftops, but at the same time, like they have to go through that, work through, and hopefully they do. I mean, I've seen people that die in that bitterness, and that's not, you never want to see that, but yeah, continue to work through and hopefully they can recognize that bitterness in themselves. And I feel like that's kind of where almost our society is. We're almost in this bitter, like angry stage or whatever, where we are mad at everybody because I don't even know, things have been projected on us that maybe we didn't want, things have been forced on us. And there's that bitterness to it. So.
Yeah, there is. And, I've come to know and believe the greatest power, the greatest energy, the greatest, I don't even like to call it an emotion, but the greatest gift we have is Christ in us, which is love. And there's the choice always to react in love or to react in fear. And fear manifests itself as hate, disgust, piety, any of those things. And the reaction from love, which I think even has me saying that, I know that there's probably somebody that'll hear that and go, she's just a hippie, but it's greater than that. I saw something the other day at the store that was to my core. I was offended on so many different levels. And I've come to a place where I go, okay, I'm offended. That's despicable. I hate that. It's awful. And what is my reaction in love? And my reaction in love is instant, not warm, fuzzy, romantic, or any of those things, but it is, that's his child too. He wanted something good for them. Yeah. They're choosing otherwise. They're choosing to react in fear, and it's manifesting in arrogance and hatefulness and awfulness. But he created them for something bigger. And it immediately shifts my focus from, which is actually one of the things I probably regret the most about an open letter to my children, is that I was reacting out of disgust in a lot of ways, but I was hoping for more for my children. There's no but in a good apology either. So I'm sorry, but that's true. I am sorry that it has, even though God used it to catapult a career that I'd never considered and a ministry that now just, I'm like, wait, what happened? But our reaction to the world around us has the potential to be the hands and feet of Christ or not.
Definitely. I love that. You've brought up two good points that I have written down. That is, is this beneficial for me? And then also that is his child too. So how are we going to react to that? Do you feel like there are any other habits that you can, like, that you've learned from your personal life that could be helpful or beneficial to other people as well, besides those?
My most favorite is everything is permissible, but it's beneficial. And that is a habit, definitely, for me. But my other most favorite is gratitude. And even in the situation, like I was talking about the story the other day, after the incident was over and I had shifted my mind and pivoted to, okay, so what does God see? I see an offense, but what does God see? And that was followed by, thank you for letting me see. Thank you for letting me be a part of that. Thank you for allowing me to remember who you are and who everyone is around me. I truly believe that gratitude is everything. It is an opportunity to rejoice in that which is basically armpit, and he gives meaning to that. There's nothing worse than a Pharisee. So I don't want to I pray I don't have an ounce of piety when I say that. But I mean, even like, I confess that Justin and I had a spat this morning. I'm grateful for the communication, even though it was harsh and we've maybe wasted the day. I'm grateful that we have each other. I'm grateful that we communicated something that was frustrating to both of us. I'm grateful. And I start naming those things. And that is everything, to be able to say that to you, in that I know my shortcomings and I'm even grateful for those, because how else would I ever change? Which is an open letter to my children. How else would I know?
Yeah. You almost have me in tears here. And I've been writing notes like crazy. So many things to learn from you. I know you've received a lot of feedback about your message, but, how is basically the areas that you're growing, helping other people be successful too? I mean, like you're saying, you don't want piety and you don't want people following you like a Pharisee type of thing, but we are here to serve and to help people. And I feel like we have a mission on this earth to do. What do you feel like yours is?
Well, I kind of fly by the seat of my pants. It's new every day. There's this part of me. I ended up talking to an author the other day for like 45 minutes. When I got the phone, Justin had heard so much of that. And he said, "Are you not going to charge for that?" I was like, I probably should have. And so then I started thinking, maybe that's what I should be doing. Maybe I should start charging authors to speak to them and stuff like that. And then instantly have this voice that went, that's just not for you. And so it's kind of day by day. I love more than anything in the world to lift up other women and young girls. I want them to be everything that they possibly can be. And some days maybe it doesn't look like I wish it could. Like, I know of a girl right now that's not going to get to go to college, and I just keep thinking, why can't I have $1 billion to fix that? And his timing is perfect, and he knows, and he created me to have these passions, which actually were ignited in me as I worked at a teen mom camp when I was 18 out of college, and they fascinated me because they had no hope, and I wanted so much more for them, and literally didn't have really anything myself, so I don't know who I thought I was, but that's what I want. Is I want women to be empowered in who they were created to be, not for necessarily all the women empowerment for whatever random reason, but for who they are, who they were created to be. I think there's nothing better than that, and seeing that rising in the freedom of being exactly who you were created to be.
That's awesome. Well, I feel like your statement of everything is permissible, it almost is an empowering statement in the fact that, you're not limiting anybody, and then you're asking them to ask the question for themselves. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes when we go through and we limit things for people, we strip away power from them. Do you know what I mean? That they don't have the intelligence, or they don't have the foresight or the knowledge to be able to make these decisions for themselves. But to be able to empower somebody, like, you could do anything, you could be anything, but what is is your specific thing that you're meant to do, I think is super helpful. I feel like that's super helpful to other people, just to give them that hope, and not to limit them on what they could be.
Oh yeah. Well, and I mean, from the get-go, we have stereotypes and the stuff you're not supposed to do and stuff you are supposed to do. And I always go back to Eve. You have everything, absolutely everything. Just don't do this one thing. And what did she do?
The one thing. Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, I think it was basically the precursor to, okay, that's how you guys are going to act. And so this is what I'm going to do. And so now you can do anything you want. There's repercussions, and there's stuff that's for you and there's stuff that's not. But go on and do it, and I'll wait here.
Well, I've got some things to tell you about that, but we'll talk about that later. I think that though that everything is permissible, it is super helpful in helping us even come to that repentance thing. Because not long ago, I talked to a guy who had a real struggle with pornography, and it was always like, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. And then one day he's like, yeah, I can do that. I can look at pornography. It's like, and then he realized, but do I choose to do that? Is that really
exactly
for me? And then it began the whole process of him actually being able to heal from this like decades long addiction that he had. Because when we have that, almost that scarcity mindset, like you said, that thing with Eve of like, you can do whatever you want, but this one thing you can, that's the thing that we hold to or we cling to. I think when we broaden our mindset to go, everything is permissible, but what do I choose not to do? All of a sudden we are in the power, and we make that choice for ourselves and not somebody else doing that for us. So
exactly.
Love
and we're created individually. So I not picking on keto, but I think it's because it's so prevalent right now, and it seems like everybody's doing it, right? And of course, because I have been raised in a diet culture, and that's been a struggle for me. That was my thing. Okay, well, I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm downloading everything, and then I stopped and went, wait just a minute. That's just not for me. I can't eat that much bacon. Please don't make me. I don't want to not have watermelon. I love watermelon. It's, to me, straight from Jesus. That's my thing. When I work out, that's what I want, watermelon. And so, okay, so he has something else in mind. That's not the only answer. If it's not for you, then he has another answer. Yeah. That is for you.
Well, to go back to that diet, that's also that scarcity thing.
Oh gosh.
And once we are limiting ourselves in what we can and cannot do, we're following somebody else's plan, basically, of what we can and cannot do. Those are the things that we crave. And then it just is this horrible cycle. I'm actually finding more success in like, I can eat anything, but I know these things help me feel better.
Make me feel better. Exactly.
Yeah. And then I'm not sticking to a diet. I'm feeling better. Whatever. I look better. I feel better. I don't know, but I'm more successful at that because I'm making the choice for that and not somebody else's plan.
Which, I mean, it's basic psychology, which he created. And, if you say you can't, that's what you want. And so when you deprive yourself to the point that you're then forced to a binge, whether it's pornography or spending or food, whatever, there's balance. He offers us balance. And what is wellness? It's balance. So, you go to a wedding, you haven't been to a wedding in years, and you're doing keto. I'm not having cake. I'm not having wedding cake. Nope, not going to have it, not going to have it, not going to have it. And then you're pushed to your limits.
All you're doing is staring at the cake.
You're just and what have you done? You've created a golden calf, and what are you worshiping at? What are you trying to stop worshiping? He made us so complex, and at the same time he offers us such simplicity.
Definitely. Well, I'd love to hear like the legacy, like maybe some long-term goals that you have and how that's creating, working into the legacy. I know that you just told us that as far as like that mission that you're supposed to do, that's always changing. But do you see like that reoccurring theme in your life, maybe that it's kind of working towards that?
I hope so. I'd be lying if I said, that everything is perfect and wonderful and exactly the way that I want it. I have no problem confessing because I didn't know anybody and I didn't know anything. My books, I don't look at numbers and stuff like that because that's not for me because it leaves me in panic. I would like for my books to be read. I would like for my art to sell. But at the same time, I don't want to be the answer. I hope that they're read and then walked away from with a new look at a good and loving God. So it's definitely a contradictory scenario. I want my books to be read and I want to write more books.
And maybe that legacy that you really want is that just when people interact with you, they feel that love, of God.
I hope that, yeah.
And that like they feel love and God shines through that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
that would be a nice legacy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, do you have any final, oh my gosh, everything I say, I'm like, oh my gosh, this goes against everything we just talked about. But do you have any final parting advice for our listeners? And then give us your contact information, how we can find out more about you.
Well, I say this whenever I sign anything or sign a blog, or I ended my book with it. I said it once in a Facebook Live, and I've said it to my kids all the time, which is, Jesus be all over you. And that to me is that he's everything. He's every answer. He's everything. You're drenched in who he truly is and not what you've made him out to be or what the world's made him out to be, but that he seeps from your pores and he's just all over you. So that's my thing, or his thing, I guess. But I love that he instilled those words in me. Just Jesus be all over you. Let him run all over you, girls, until you can't escape the truth of who he is. And you can find me at sacredgroundstickyfloors.com, and that's my website, and everything's on there. Links to my books, blog posts, and if it's not on my store in the shop, then it's on Etsy, which is Jami Amerine's studio. And I'm on Instagram at Jami Amerine, and Facebook. I don't do a lot of Twitter because it's not enough words. And
that's how I feel about it.
Obviously. And but Jami Amerine's Sacred Ground Sticky Floors is my Facebook, and those are my people.
Contact information. Yeah, that's great.
And you can also just, if you want to, you can just email me at jamie@sacredgroundstickyfloors.com.
That's so wonderful. I have a whole page and a half of notes. You have really impacted my day in a very positive way. So I really appreciate that. I hope the listeners feel the same way. Again, we've been chatting with Jami Amerine. She is an author, speaker, and artist. We didn't even talk about that. She has some great things on our website. We've been mostly talking about her third book, Well Girl, An Inside Out Journey to Wellness. You can find her in a lot of places, and we're going to link that up, especially the sacredgroundstickyfloors.com. But thank you so much, Jami, for coming on and speaking to us about just amazing topics about wellness. I really appreciate it.
I really had a good time. Thank you so much for having me, Rebecca.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Music featured in this episode from Scott Holmes. To learn more about our podcast, check us out at theluminousmind.net.